Welcome to Speaking of Strong Style, where we discuss the events, news, and issues surrounding New Japan Pro Wrestling. I am Stephen Conway. With me, as always, is Jeremy Finestone. We are contributors to the Fight Game Media Network. Jeremy, it's good to see you again. How have you been this week?
You know what? I'm doing great. Life is busy as always right now. The
Mm-hmm.
G1 just happened to land in the middle of the busiest time in my life. But I am here to tell you all about it because I love the G1 and I love all of you.
Well, we're glad you're here, and I know there has been a lot going on, but we managed to watch all of these matches and not been disappointed in the least. Jeremy, there's been some
Oh.
really interesting stuff in these. I'm looking forward to getting into the meat of the matter here in a little bit as we go over these cards because with the different format, I think a lot of people are skeptical of this G1, and it's different than past years, but this has been a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, I've been trying to find the right analogy to describe people's varying excitement levels for this. And the best thing that I can come up with is that this feels like a World Series in which maybe not your two favorite teams are playing, but you're getting a classic matchup every
Mhm.
time they come to the field. And every year it's going to be a little bit different. Every year it can be a little bit amazing in its own different way. But there are some that are just better than others over the years, and objectively and subjectively, people just kind of like some better than the other. If somebody told me this is their favorite G1 of all time, I'd have no inclination to argue or disagree with them. It's not my favorite, but it's up there as a lot of fun, and I'm enjoying it. What about you?
Well, I'm going to guess that if anyone says that this is their favorite G1 of all time, that they are a big David Finlay fan. So we're going to get to all
Mm.
that in a little bit. There have been surprises. That's the one thing about New Japan that is both satisfying and can be frustrating sometimes in that it does have a booking pattern. And Gato, of course, one of the Bullet Club wrestler and manager, is the booker at in New Japan, and he has his patterns. And when you watch a lot of New Japan, you recognize them. It doesn't bother you so much because so much of it is rooted in logic, and that's rare in wrestling anyway, as we're seeing here in North America. Although, man, maybe it's starting to get better. We'll find out soon.
It's like a
Uh,
song, man. Like you hear a
yeah,
song and it's like it's poppy and it's beat, and if it's done well, you're gonna want to hear it all the time.
but he's thrown some new things in, and there are
Mm-hmm.
some people that have won matches that you would never have expected to win, and people that are doing better in the standings than you ever would have expected them to do. And it may be a signal that he recognizes that after the last few years of being pandemic ridden and stuck in a bit of a rut, that it is time maybe for some people to get pushes that hadn't in the past or had been mid carders in the past and bring them up. It could be
Yeah.
leading to some other redemption stories down the road, but there have been more surprises. Like, I'm usually pretty good about picking winners in these things, and my percentage is a little bit lower than usual as far as just picking who's going to win individual matches. And I don't mind because it's surprising me in a good way. I'm really kind of having fun with it.
It's the pathway factor. You have four different ways to get through a bracket. You have the A, B, C, and D bracket, whereas in the past you had the A bracket and you had the B bracket,
Mm-hmm.
and you were only going to get one winner out of that. And some of these
Right.
subplots that you would have, there would only be a brick wall conclusion. Now you can tell four disparate stories
Right.
at the same time in which every one of these potential contenders have an struggle to overcome in some way, shape, or form. That when they get out of their bracket, all of a sudden you look at them like, look at the field that they had to go through, and wow, they really were the best.
Mm-hmm.
Now, to do that, you had to create contenders. You had to create credible challengers within these brackets because, they didn't have 28 people that felt like they could threaten. So all of a
Yeah.
sudden you have Yoshihashi and David Finlay stepping up their game to the point where you're just like, where did this come from? And it's just one of those, that is what New Japan is. When you have the talent that rises to the opportunity and tell you like, hey, you know what? You slept on me. This is why you're wrong. And man, I have to eat it, and I'll tell you why. There's about 3 or 4 weeks ago we talked about David Finlay, and I said, it just kind of feels like he was at the bottom of this pecking order for reasons of maybe potentially going to WWE, but Juice Robinson is kind of elevated past him and a couple of these other guys. And now, like, if somebody were to come at that clip before I admitted it myself, I'd be like, yeah, I got to eat that one, because you know what? He's won matches, but he's looked great doing it.
Oh boy, has he.
That 15-minute sprint with Will Osprey, part of the reason like he won is because he caught Will.
Mm-hmm.
He caught him with the Trash Panda. I love that name, by the way, the Trash
That's
Panda.
a great one, yes.
But it's just exciting, man. You're seeing freshness, and you're not seeing the same guys win, even though the same guys will probably win out the bracket. The opportunities in each bracket to tell these stories in which, you know, Yoshihashi gets a little bit of shine in the one bracket, Finley gets a little bit here, Shingo Takagi is looking good. He could potentially go all the way through, but you know, this really isn't a Shingo Takagi like G1 so far.
Oh, absolutely not. I mean, he's backed up. He's only got 2 points.
But
he's only won once.
And you're looking at it like, when is Shingo going to turn on being Shingo? Is he, you know, like there are things that like the guys that are shining were not the guys that I expected to shine so far.
Yeah, I mean, halfway through this tournament, I'm looking at the standings over here. I mean, Tetsuya Naito, Shingo Takagi, 2 points each. That's it. And Ishii, 2 points each. Great-O-Khan, 2 points. 2 points each for just Ishii. He's 2 men. He has the power of 2 men, so each. But Taichi, you know, a lot of people on 2, and we're going to see some late rallies. That's always part of the G1. But the pleasant surprises have been coming plentifully here in this one. So now there was one other show, Jeremy. I know that we're not going to spend a whole lot of time on this because it was part of that kind of icky Ric Flair retirement match weekend.
Yes.
And I say icky. I mean, I love Ric Flair. I respect him. He's not a perfect man by any stretch of anybody's imagination, but he's one of the great performers in this industry. I feel like there are forces within his family maybe that are trying to make a little bit of money off of Rick late in his life. He wrestled a match. Well, he was in a match. I'm not going to say he wrestled it. I'm not going to say that but it was part of the whole SummerSlam weekend in Nashville. So the Nashville Fairgrounds was very busy, and we're not going to talk about the Ric Flair retirement show, but there was another show at the Nashville Fairgrounds the day before. And this one featured some New Japan talent. And I just wanted to run this by you here real quick. The match that actually intrigued me was the opener, and it was Yuya Uemura, Fred Yehi, Shota Umino defeating Ren Narita, Kevin Knight, and the DKC in a 6-man opener. That was probably a terrific match. You know, nice there. We also saw Fred Rosser defend the NJPW Strong title, beating Big Damo, the former Killian Dane in NXT and WWE and Raw and all that. Hiroma Takahashi.
Paid, Damo. Get paid.
I see. I think he's underrated. I like that guy.
I do. If he's going to show up on a card, like he's always a guy you can count on to put on a good match.
Hiroma Takahashi defeated Blake Christian. So Hiromo, he was also, of course, part of the Charlotte NJPW Strong taping. So we'll be seeing him on that show. TJP, Mark Davis, and Kyle Fletcher. So United Empire members there defeated Alex Zane, Dax Hardwood, and Cash Wheeler. So FTR and Alex Zane took the loss in that one. Alex Shelley and Kushida wrestled each other. So the Time Splitters, one of the all-time great junior heavyweight tag teams in New Japan, wrestled one another to a 20-minute draw. And El Desperado.
Can I wait?
Oh, go ahead. No, sorry.
Would you call that a wrinkle in time?
Could be. Maybe it should be. But a no disqualification match in the finale. I'm not a big death match, weapons match, no DQ guy. Although John Moxley does them a little better than most people do them. He defeated El Desperado. And the only thing I can think of is the Desperado just wanted to try something different. And
everybody's lining up to wrestle John Moxley. I mean, it's one of those, if you're not getting your chance to wrestle John Moxley between 2018 and 2025, what are you really doing with your life in pro wrestling?
Yeah, he's definitely an equal opportunity match signer. He'll wrestle anybody, and I'm sure it was entertaining. There was a wooden board with cut in half aluminum cans glued to it. And if you have ever cut your finger on an aluminum can, you know what this will do to somebody's back. So these two were bloody ribbons afterwards and things. So whatever. If as I say, there's a paddle for every ass out there. So there you go. That was that one. So
I do not begrudge anyone who chose to purchase and or watch that show. However, I will say I was not the audience for it.
Yeah, that wasn't my thing either. But hopefully the audience enjoyed it there and everybody got out of it safely. But it wasn't particularly canon. There wasn't anything coming out of it that leads to anything else. It was kind of a self-contained show right there. But there was New Japan talent on it, so I thought it was worth bringing up quickly.
Well, speaking of New Japan talent, we'll cover Strong before we just go hard in on the G1. Okay. So this past weekend, Jeff Cobb just absolutely squashed Jordan Clearwater. He's a big guy, but Cobb still killed him. Fred Yehai defeated Bateman. Kind of a forgettable match, but Yehai is slowly building a resume within New Japan Strong. And then Aussie Open advanced in the Tag Team Strong tournament after they defeated Stray Dog Army. And then very interesting and a very good match, Jay White, Hikuleo, and Chase Owens defeated Hiroshi Tanahashi, champion Fred Rosser, and Kevin Knight. So that sets up some very interesting things in the future, especially when you have the IWGP champion on one side and the New Japan Strong champion on the other, and they're wrestling each other. Mm-hmm. That doesn't happen very often.
No, I think that is interesting. So we'll see what comes of that.
So that was on Strong. If people feel like checking it out, I give it a 2 thumbs up recommendation. No stars here, just thumbs up.
So there's plenty of stars star ratings to deal with in wrestling. They don't need additional ones for sure.
Not so
moving on to the G1. So we were in Nagoya last weekend. That means no Chris Charlton. Chris doesn't leave Tokyo. Apparently the ankle bracelet goes off or something like that if he leaves town. But he is that left us with some interesting color commentators with Kevin Kelly. And the first night in Nagoya was El Fantasmo, who sat in after doing a preview tag. And this one was attended by 2,225 people, the listed attendance, which is pretty good for Nagoya right there. And it started off with one of the big surprises of the week that seems less surprising now that we know a little more. But in the moment, I watched David Finlay pin Shingo Takagi, a former world heavyweight champion. Jeremy, did you have your holy crap moment like I did?
I did not.
No.
I was reached out by a certain someone to let me know that something was coming in this show. And,
did I telegraph it too much?
And I was like, what could happen here? Like, well, this could. Oh, that did happen. Okay. So this is we put on our cover last week David Finlay, and apparently we were a week early on this.
Maybe
one.
So. Yeah, because we were talking about this one. Well, this week would be the week to do it, as it turns out. We thought he'd had his moment. We thought he had his big win over Juice, but no, his big moments were just starting.
We are creating contenders to for the eventual block winner to overcome. I think that there is a ceiling to David Finlay right now, and it is very, very high. But I think it would be somewhat naive to think that he is going to leave the bracket. I think he is going to be a guy that is going to scare the eventual bracket winner before they win. But man, if that resume, I was just thinking all the way back to that match he had with Hangman Page before Forbidden Door. I feel like from that point on, we didn't realize it at the time, but we had already begun to see a different David Finlay at that point. And it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and it's something that we're going to get to a little bit later on when we get to the Will Osprey match with him. But this match was the first block match of the night, so I was not looking for an upset at all. I mean, the Juice Robinson one, you think, well, it's a main event, maybe they'll have the babyface go over, but like the first block matches, the early ones, they tend to go according to plan, so to speak, and save the stuff for later. But no, they threw this one at us. It was a very good match. I mean, Shingo Takagi is one of the best in the world, and Finlay has stepped up his game, like you mentioned. He kicked out of Made in Japan. Now, Last of the Dragon is the true Shingo finisher, but he beats a lot of people with Made in Japan too, and he did that. He got a stunner, he got a roll up, the crowd was as shocked as I was. I
Yes.
absolutely was amazed, and that crowd in Nagoya had something to murmur about, since you're not allowed to talk, but they could murmur. They could murmur about it as soon as that one happened.
One of the things that I have to commend, El Phantasmo did a fantastic job
Yes.
on as the guest announcer tonight, and he really sold this finish as well.
Yeah.
Like, he was like, "Oh my god, I can't believe that I just saw this," and it was, and it really set in the fact that, like, wow, hey, like,
Yeah,
like, just a very, like, your breath was caught in your throat in a moment for just a moment. You're just like, did I? There's no that's it. Okay.
yeah.
We're doing this. David
Yeah.
Finlay.
Yeah, there you go.
So it's a really interesting thing with David Finlay. He is now neck and neck with in the D block. So the eventual winner would have to win out over him, because Finlay is a tiebreaker guy.
Yeah. There's a lot of possibilities going on here. You're absolutely right.
So checkers and chess with Gato over here this time around.
I feel like we could see, because of the format, a playoff match where the tiebreakers don't decide it. You know, the head-to-head tiebreakers don't decide it, and they're forced to have one more match. Okay. I think we could get something like that.
Do they still have a mystery date on the G1 calendar? Like, I knew when they announced the dates, there seemed to be one more, but then they announced the format and it seemed to all the math checked out. But
I think it could be something they could just add to the semifinals night. You know, like we'll do this match first, then do a few other things, and then have whoever comes out of that first match go into the semis later.
Okay.
They could. I mean, they could do it that way. But I'm not aware of any other blank dates on the slate there.
Yeah, I wasn't sure. I remember seeing it, but I'm so firmly in the I'm gonna live in the moment of the G1 instead of trying to track everything but the final night, that it's just making this so much more fun for me.
So we have the next one goes to Jonah and Tom Waller, and this match was better than their first matches. And they're like, Jonah had to deal with Yano and Lawler with Lance Archer, and I mentioned nothing against Lance Archer or Tom Waller, but it wasn't a great matchup. Like, that kind of grappling submission thing isn't what Archer does best. Jonah and Waller, I thought, matched up a little bit better, but the story continues to be that Tom is physically overwhelmed by these guys, because Jonah won this one without a whole lot of drama.
Yeah, I really did try and upsell the Lance Archer one as being better than it was, and that's fair. It wasn't that good. This was better. I don't think we've really seen the potential of both guys yet in the G1, and I think we're starting to. I'm not sure if this is Jonah being booked bad, or he's just not clicking yet in some way, shape, or form, for whatever reason. Whether it's just like he just hasn't found his stride. This is the biggest opportunity of his career, and sometimes it just takes a little while for people to get hot.
Well, I mean, the first match he had to lose by count out to Yano, and no one's going to look good doing that. It was a comedy match, and this one was. I thought this match was good. I mean, I thought it was good. And,
but I think there's an escalation thing where we're going to see a better Jonah throughout the tournament.
Well, he's wrestling. He's going to wrestle Jeff Cobb on Friday, which that should be fantastic. And
he'll have the Okada match, and the Okada match is probably what he circled around the calendar as the one. But
his big splash in this one off the top got a huge response from Nagoya at that point. That crowd was really into that, and in their preview tags, he's been impressive. I think Jonah's having a good tour. It's just that he had this match was fine. I thought it was good, and certainly an improvement on their first ones that they had, where they just had matchups where it was difficult for either one to look good.
I should clarify here. I don't think he's doing bad at all. Okay. I'm just not sure he's tapped his full potential. And when we were talking about guys like Finlay and Yoshihashi really standing out and making a name for themselves right there, I thought Jonah was going to be that kind of guy that was doing that, and that we would be talking about him right now in the way that we're talking kind of about those guys being wowed and awed. And we're just not there yet, and maybe we just haven't had that moment. And that's all I'm saying.
Yeah, no, like you said, like Jonah's going to wrestle Jeff Cobb. He's going to
Yeah.
wrestle Okada to go. If you look at the D block, like the guys we're talking about, and you're right. Like Yoshihashi has had terrific matches. Finlay has had terrific matches, but they're also in a block that includes Will Osprey, Shingo Takagi, El Phantasmo, and there's more potential for good matches when you're working with Yano, Bad Luck Fale, who is having a bad tournament. We're going to talk about him in a little bit. And he doesn't always, but this is not a good tournament for him. But anyway, we're getting ahead of ourselves.
Sure.
But
I just wanted to contextualize why I was saying what I was saying.
Yeah. And after that one, we had Sonata and the Great Okan. And this was a win for Sonata in about 1635. Yeah, 1635. And there was a lot of amateur style wrestling in the beginning of this. And they continued to tell the story of the Eye, which of course makes sense. He had to vacate the U.S. title, Sonata did, because of the broken orbital bone. Jay White went after it. Other people have gone after it in other matches and things, and Okan did here as well. Nevertheless, Sonata did get the win, and I wanted to bring this up to you.
Yeah,
Okan, not having a great tournament at this point. He's not. I mean, performance-wise, he's fine. I like him. I think he's doing well in the ring, but he's being booked at only 2 points after, I think, he's halfway through his tournament. He's got 2 points. Has he kind of switched places in the United Empire with Henare? Because in the past, if anybody took a fall in a United Empire match, it wasn't going to be Cobb, and it's not going to be Osprey. And they would usually beat Henare. And now Henare only has 2 points also, but even in the preview tags, they're getting the full Nelson over. He's getting a lot of submission victories, and it seems like it seems like they're beating Okan more now. I mean, is that just maybe recency bias?
I would chalk it up to him being at least third or fourth on the stable right now in a tournament in which most stables don't even have 3 or 4 guys in the tournament. So there's going to be some real estate that you're going to have to give up in order to establish credibility. Otherwise, I would not be surprised if Henare and Great Okan have near the same record at the end of the tournament, maybe tied, something like that. I think if you're going to see pendulum swings, a bunch of guys that are losing early are going to win later. A bunch of guys that are like flipping, flopping, just kind of like the David Finlay thing, the Tanahashi thing, the Naito thing. It's at a lower level, but I would not worry at all about Great Okan and how he looks right now. He is a C plot, like United Empire thing when you got your eyes on Jeff Cobb and you got your eyes on Will Osprey. And every time that they're going in those 4-man, 3-man tags with United Empire, those guys are dominating everything. Yeah. So not worried. I just think that, the real estate, as I was saying, has to be given up in some way, shape, or form. And, congratulations. You're doing the job tonight, big guy.
Well, and his one win, to be fair to Okan's booking, his one win, and again, it's not Okan's performance; it's the booking of him, his character that we're talking about. But his one win was over Tomohiro Ishii, and they don't beat him with anybody, just anybody. So there's it could be just that. This next match was sublime. I loved it. Hiroshi Tanahashi, Zack Saber Jr. We talked last week about how Tetsuya Naito and Hiroshi Tanahashi have the mind for it, but not the knees. So when they wrestled each other, you could just see that they were laboring a little bit and that they just can't move with the same crispness that they used to after everything that their bodies have been through. I think Zack Saber Jr. might be the perfect opponent for Hiroshi Tanahashi at this stage in his career. He's so smart in the ring. Zack can do so much, and it's so much work on the ground, so much grappling. These guys barely hit the ropes. Tanahashi didn't have to run a whole lot. He did one jump. He did the aces high. He did not end up doing the high fly flow just because of the way the match ended up. Storytelling wise, this was fantastic. This was a great technical match, and I think it hid everything that handicaps Tanahashi as far as having to run, and just the psychology of it was beautiful. There was one of those wonderful scrambling series of pin sequences where someone gets kind of a flash win, and both Sonata and Zack Sabre Jr. are great at these. And this one ended up with Tanahashi beating him. And the post-match reaction between the two men, I loved. This is one of my favorite things I've seen in this tournament this year.
I had a smile from ear to ear when I watched the end of this match, because it's just one of those, like, Tanahashi just fucking got him. He got him. And it was one of those, Zack Sabre was like, he didn't get me.
Yeah.
And it was like, that's the second time that Tanahashi has sat on the ground with his opponent, and they've had that little conversation of like, I'm still Tanahashi, motherfucker.
Yeah. And Zach's whole thing was like, he was almost amused by it. He said,
Yes.
you really got me. You really, he was holding up two fingers, but he knew, like, that was how Zach was playing it up.
How subtle they've made the face turn for Zack Sabre Jr. Like 9 months ago, like, the idea that he would turn face, like, he was having the Tekker tag matches, but like, people wanted to see it happen, and now the entire, like, Suzuki-gun stable by default is kind of, minus Archer, but like, nobody really knows what Archer is. He's just a big guy that likes to hurt people, and that can be a face or a heel. But like, he is the face of that stable for most parts, and he is so good at what he does that like, if Osprey can have a stable like United Empire, I don't understand why Zack Sabre Jr. isn't doing the same thing. But back to the point, fantastic match. I love seeing Hiroshi Tanahashi operating at a high level without hurting himself.
Yeah, absolutely.
It is just fantastic. And I don't want him to continue wrestling when he can no longer do it. But when he can do matches like this and make it look as great as it does with doing his little work, like, ain't that the dream?
This is the same man that had the no disqualification match with Kenta, where they're jumping off of ladders and almost killing themselves. And that same guy can go in, and it was exciting, and the story was that Tanahashi doesn't like that kind of wrestling, and but he'll do it anyway if it means getting his hands on Kenta. This one was polar. I mean, 180 degrees opposite. This was just a technical masterpiece there, where there wasn't any of that hatred or violence. It was just two really good grapplers going at it and not using the ropes, which just makes the match look so different, and all of the ins and outs of submissions and holds and things. And this is the same man that can do that. He's one of the true great minds in the business. There are very few people that can work with that wide a variety of matches and opponents and have all of it look good. And it's a very short list, and Tanahashi's on it.
I was looking at the schedule for Tanahashi coming up, and I'm like, he's got great opponents all the way through. Although I'll tell you, I completely whiffed on the comprehension that the second before the final night, he's got a match with Kenta.
Yeah, it's coming. We're gonna do it again.
I think Hiroshi Tanahashi's G1 hopes will be coming to a violent end after the events of Wrestle Kingdom. I don't feel great about that. I don't feel great.
It's fun to watch. There's so many ways Block C could go, and we talked about it before the tournament. It was the most wide open, and right now, we'll go over the standings at the end, of course. But right now, Tanahashi and Saber are on top, but nobody out of it. No one has 6, and no one has 0. So Gato is doing exactly what. When we looked at the thing, we're like, well, geez, anybody could win this. Well, yes, anybody can win this. And anyone can rally. And you got Naito, there's Kenta, there's so many ways this could go. The C block's been a lot of fun. So.
The C block's been a lot of fun. If Naito's to win, he's got to win all 4 out, and Tanahashi has to lose one more than him because of the tiebreaker.
Yeah.
Oh, these tiebreakers. The tiebreaker. We are starting to talk about tiebreakers. Hey, are we at the halfway point of the G1? Because it feels like we're talking about tiebreakers.
I know it. We're only halfway through. So that was the first night in Nagoya. Yes. They came back to the same building the next night, and they drew 500 more that night, 2741, the announcement. Sunday shows usually do better than Saturday shows in Japan for whatever reason. And this one had a pretty solid lineup overall, and the first G1 match there was Jeff Cobb and Lance Archer. And this continued the story, Jeremy, that Jeff Cobb may be the strongest human being not named Mark Henry. Is this dude managed to put the doggone Tour of the Islands on Lance Archer, who has got to be one of the most awkward, just because he's so long. His just sheer length has to make that really difficult, I would think. I don't know. I don't lift heavy things the way Jeff Cobb does, because hardly anybody does. So I don't know if his length makes it easier or more difficult. Maybe, I don't know. I would like to ask that question to him someday. But he defeated Lance Archer. This match was all leading to the spin cycle and Tour of the Islands. I mean, everything that happened in it. Archer, this is a better matchup for him than Lawler was. He knows how to do this kind of a big man, hard hitting, and he was good at moving Cobb around. It was a better performance for him too, and I enjoyed it. But the match was solely built so that people could see him hit that Tour of the Islands. He did it, looked terrific, got the win, and Cobb rolls on. It's really coming down to what we imagined: Cobb and Kazuchika Okada.
Yeah, I really appreciated Cobb afterwards, just going up to Kevin Kelly and just like, I'm the number one monster in this bracket. And it's like, you're making a compelling argument, my friend. I will tell you that there were 2 1, 2, 3s for me in this match. Not only was there the 1, 2, and 3 of the pin, but 3 times how many times I replayed the Tour of the Island that Cobb landed on Archer. Because you're just looking at him like, huh. Yeah, I'm going to look at that again.
Yeah. He's just incredibly strong. So good stuff.
Last time I just like, that's really impressive. That's committed to memory.
Up next, Yoshihashi defeated Juice Robinson, and Juice having a rough go of it after an opening win. He lost to Finlay, and now he's lost to Yoshihashi. And terrific match though. I was surprised again here, but not overly surprised. Yoshihashi was going to win 1 or 2 of these, and I did enjoy the Tommy Young spot. They did the Tommy Young spot with Marty Asami where Juice shoved him and Marty shoved him right back, knocked him on his ass. Yoshihashi's a good underdog, and he's good at making you think that he might win, but they've done it so many times with him that he might win but doesn't quite, that when he does get the win like he did here, there's a little bit of burst of joy. You're just like, oh, we got one. Terrific.
Yeah,
good for him. Good. It was a good match.
It's the credibility reestablishment. Every so often, the guy that almost going to win it has to actually win it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's just the guy who almost wins it and you never believe it anymore. So I have to give Juice Robinson a lot of credit. He's looking healthier and he's able to go in the ring after getting the appendix issue going on. I was skeptical he was going to be able to really gut it out and do a gritty performance in the G1. And so far, like the dude came to work. So just shout out to Juice Robinson. Way to show up to work and work hard.
He also looks like he's really enjoying this new heel character.
Yes.
Definitely just as invigorated as a new heel as Tama Tonga is as a new babyface.
I would say he's rock hard for his new gimmick.
That's a Chris Charlton line if ever I've heard one.
I learned from the best.
So Filthy Tom Waller, by the way, filled in on commentary on this one, and it was very, very interesting. He really made some interesting points. I liked hearing him on there a lot, and we're going to get to one of those points because it really played into something later on in the show. But anyway, good work there. I wanted to get that off the top for Tom Waller. Jay White.
Sidebar real quick.
Go ahead.
Do you ever listen to Tom Waller commentary or with Brian Alvarez, the Figure 4 Daily?
When I can, I don't always get to that show just because, hours in the day, not because of the quality of it. I always enjoy it when I listen to it, but I don't hear it very often.
It's pretty impressive that like that polished him so much for when he came on the show. It was like, yeah, this guy's ready to do an outing, and it was like, hey, thanks Figure 4 for wrestling him cover radio.
Well, and he did a wonderful promo talking about people he has lost and the things that he's lost and why losing those people helps him when he loses a match to rally and things. So he also cut some terrific backstage promos in this tour also. So he's definitely verbally gifted. He did a hell of a job here.
I've really enjoyed him, and I was logicking out why some people are in the G1 and not others, and then I was realizing, oh yeah, Lance Archer was the last United States title holder, and so he probably got the invite to be in the G1 canonically over some of these other guys. I'm like, oh, that kind of makes sense. I'm like, I just needed to think this out a little bit.
So we had Jay White defeating Chase Owens. Now, you had to turn your brain off for this one,
Yes,
Jeremy.
he did.
There was a spiel, and they do this all the time with Bullet Club, and we have to sit through it every time. This one, because of the two people involved, was a little better acted than most of them.
Sure.
But there was the stupid laydown story again, and it goes the same way. Someone's going to lay down for someone else, and then they don't. This one had some more holes in it than usual. There was a in sumo wrestling. There are all these ceremonies where you give an envelope full of money to people who win big matches in sumo. There's more than that goes on, but that's part of it. Is an envelope full of money, and they presented Chase Owens with the envelope of money to lay down for Jay White, and they gave it to there was all this, I don't know if I trust you, I don't know if I trust you. They gave it to the ring announcer for safekeeping, and then Chase went and looked at it, and of course the wad of money was bookended by real money and then blank paper in the middle. And
that sneaky Jay White.
Yeah, and so there's so much dipshittery on that it's hard to really wrap your head around. So you have to just kind of forget about that. It's incredibly dumb because, like, logic wise, say it works. Say he does it. Say from Ghetto, if all this is real, right? Say it works. Jay White does this. Ghetto is in on it. Chase falls for it. He gets back to his hotel room that night. Oh, I'm going to open up my big wad of money, and there's blank paper in there. Did they just screw him over to the point that he would quit Bullet Club? Or this would start a feud with, you know what I mean? Like, this isn't just like, ha ha, I got you. This would be like something
that should lead to legitimately Chase Owens costing him the IWGP Championship and showing the envelope with only two $100 bills that says, you want to rip me off, I'll rip you off. That kind of, I get
absolutely right. And we have to sit here and just go, oh, and then in the end they're doing the too sweet. Oh, we were just I guess it's just Bullet Club. We just try to get each other, and you almost got me, ding ding.
Yeah, and you know what they say, honor among thieves, man. I get it. I already did.
yeah, you just got to turn your brain off. But
I was like, Chase Owens and Jay White, like, if somebody wants to say like Jay White is bad, they're gonna use this match to counter their bad faith argument. You know what I mean?
The wrestling in this match, like, once they cut that crap and started wrestling each other and gave up on the idea of the laydown and that now we're just going to wrestle and see who wins, wasn't bad. You know, like, Chase is a very capable worker, far more capable. You know what? This is the wrestling business with fans sometimes, and we've seen it with idiots talking about Eddie Kingston. We hear some of it with Chase Owens. If Chase Owens were cut, if Chase Owens had Jay White's abs, I think that a lot of people would like him better. But
he's look like that.
He's a very good worker, and he's a very good worker. And anyway, the whole thing was Jay White did end up beating him, of course. I mean, the story on this is Jay White rolling through the B block until he doesn't. And
I want to go back to this thing real quick. They've always, for the last 5 years, had a guy that just kind of looks a little schlubby that can go in the ring. I love Chuck Taylor, but he was the same kind of guy. You know, like, he could go in the ring, he could do some acrobatic stuff, he could go, and he's a good worker, but he wasn't this, magnificently cut body guy. And sometimes that's not what they're looking for over there. And if you're in a heel group and you got like the schlubby guy that kind of steals one out from time to time, like, you're going to make money with that. I don't, you know what I mean? Like, you're missing the point of what Chase Owens is supposed to be in that stable.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, but he's a good worker, and he protects those other guys because a lot of times he's the one that ends up taking the falls in the 6-mans and 8-mans and things when they need to. So next up was Kazuchi Okada and Bad Luck Fale. And I have my notes. He said, best Fale match, worst Okada match. So he works with Fale relatively well. It's not the only time he's gotten something decent out of Bad Luck Fale. He did win. But is Fale okay? Is Fale hurt? Is he just getting old? Because this is the worst he's looked in a G1 so far.
It's the same bag of tricks with Folly. Like, he comes out there, he's training a lot of talent over in Australia and New Zealand, and they brought him in for the veteran because they had a plan to have a bunch of monsters, and he checked off some boxes. No one's expecting Folly to impress anybody, But at the same time, when you're looking at high caliber matches in the G1 and you feel like you're missing out on an opportunity because another guy could have been better served in this role, I get the frustration. But, it's like, I also don't want Okada killing himself before the end of the year because I have a feeling there's big plans for Okada. So you kind of have to, the whole tournament sure seems more designed to keep keep their their best talent healthy coming out of the tournament.
Folly used to be a guy that the best workers could get a good match out of.
Sure.
So he was capable of being carried. Like there was a really good, like he switched the Intercontinental title years ago back and forth with Shinsuke Nakamura, and both of those matches were pretty good. I'm not going to say wonderful, but they were pretty good. And lately, we haven't been able to get pretty good out of Fale lately. So I don't know if he's hurt or if he's just maybe it's just past that time. But anyway,
I would argue that Fale and Tanahashi have very comparable wrestling minds. Very, very comparable. Like they understand the business. They understand how to compose matches. They have all the tools in which to teach people to do a match and all these things. Unfortunately, they have different physical limitations that make it a little more on each end to execute those said plans. I have no doubt that Fale could put together a 4-star match. Can he do a 4-star match? That is a completely different story.
All right.
You know what I mean? Well, like he can agent his own match and probably, you know what I'm saying? Like
I suppose
he's got the wrestling mind. He's just not there anymore. And that's what his value is he can teach. And that's him.
All right. Now, up until this point, we hadn't heard the 15-minute call for any of these G1 matches. They all ended fairly quickly. But the main event was Tetsuya Naito and Evil. And this one went 24-54. So this is what they were saving all the time for and shaving it earlier. And this is, of course, these two have all kinds of history because Evil turned on Los Ingobernables and went into Bullet Club and now part of House of Torture. And they work well together. And this was a pretty good match. Naito got the win finally after starting the G1 0-2, when basically the whole story was he loses this one, his G1's already over. And we'll get to something else he said afterwards, but they did a pile driver through a table, so they weren't taking it easy in this one. But Naito in the end did get the win in a pretty good match, certainly a better match than Evil usually has with this current gimmick of interference and weapons and a foreign object type of matches that he has. And the only notes I had for this one, though, other than pretty good, was this is where Tom Waller shined, because at one point he mentions that Evil's wrist braces have studs on them, and he mentioned that he was actually rubbing those studs into Naito's Achilles when he had an ankle lock on. And Kevin Kelly just went, and said something that I kind of thought at the same time. So I've been watching Evil since he got to New Japan. I never thought of that. And what a terrific little bit for a color commentator to throw in there to put something else in the fan's mind about what a dirtbag this guy is. That he might be cheating using these little things on sensitive tendons and pressure points on a guy, and now I'm going to look for it.
Waller's got a future as commentator, I have a feeling.
Yeah. But to your point, you mentioned that this is the tear the man down so that he can rally to the front. And right now, Naito's kind of in the race, but he's been lapped, but now he has a new set of tires on. He's got the victory, and he may well, if you look at how the tea leaves can play out, and if you look at the future schedule, this could be his run to the semifinals and the block win. Jeremy, what did you think of this one?
I thought it was really good. I felt like it was decidedly lacking in the typical shenanigans that Evil matches have. I think they played it a lot straighter of a traditional match, and I think it benefited. I think the credibility of Naito's win was stronger, that they approached it more like a grudge match rather than a shenanigan match. If you know what I mean by the shenanigans of a typical House of Torture, Dick Togo show, all those guys showing up and causing problems. The there wasn't any lights pulled out in this match, right? Like the lights didn't get.
No.
No, yeah, all that stuff that's been happening in all these other matches, they stayed away from it, and that to me was a breath of fresh air, because I kind of thought all that stuff would happen before the finish, especially since it was like a main event match.
Yeah,
didn't happen. It was just Naito coming out on top and looking good. Starting the run.
there you go. All right. So we had that was that night, and then we moved on to Tuesday in Hamamatsu, and this one smaller building, 1128, so about a Cork and Hall sized crowd for this one in a smaller town, in a smaller place. And but it had some interesting stuff on it here. They got a decent show out of it, and the first tournament match was the Great Khan getting that win over Tomohiro Ishii. Khan, of course, like we mentioned before, had started off with a couple of losses, and whoever lost this one was going to end up with 3 losses in the tournament, which pretty much takes them out of actually winning. They can play spoiler, so that pretty much puts Ishii down in that category at 1-3. But this was a good, hard-hitting match. Ishii's excellent, works well with almost everybody. Good stiff match, won by the heel here with the big claw. It's not a choke slam; it's a claw slam. And but over than that, you're in the first G1 match of the night. You don't necessarily pull out all the stops. You just have a solid match and do what you're supposed to do. And this one was to get Great Khan on the board.
This was mathematically fun, and it delivered exactly what I thought it would do, because we're at that point where you can kind of like see the directions of where you think things are going to go, and it was just a hard-hitting match. It wasn't. I would be surprised if it was anyone's favorite match of the G1, but a couple people there might just be a huge homer for the Great Khan and Ishii, and this is the banana sundae split for them. Not 100% for me, but I don't have any complaints about this match whatsoever.
And that moved on to the opposite for me anyway. Tom Waller and Toru Yano. And Filthy Tom and Yano, this match, Jeremy, was everything I was afraid it was going to be. It was just nothing but clowning, goofiness. I understand why it was booked like that. Tom Waller had the cup on so that when he tried the nut shot, it didn't work. Why other people don't do this is a mystery, I think, to one and all. But nevertheless, Tom has thought of something that dozens of New Japan wrestlers have not, and he put a cup on to wrestle Toru Yano, and he won the match. Lawler, of course, we mentioned that when he's faced a couple of monsters so far, he's looked. They played it up like he's physically overwhelmed. That's been the style of match and the story they've been telling. So with this one, they found a way to get him 2 points and on the board as well.
I will tell you, audience, right now, right here, the split of how Conway and I are different is right here, because 100% tremendously enjoyed this match.
All right, I'm out of here.
It was buffoonery. It was dumb, but I knew what Tom Waller is capable of. He is capable of this buffoonery. We've all watched enough Strong, I'd imagine, to know that Tom Waller is a silly, silly individual. And I knew going into this, I knew 100% going into this, that both guys were going to lean in hard. We got our Sister Act and Sister Act 2 out of it.
Yeah.
We might potentially have a SisterCt 3 next year that he can give them the DVD for. This is all in the pipeline.
Just to explain, if you didn't see the match, so Yano, as usual, is
I made you have to explain it.
Yeah, God. Yano always sells his DVDs. That's one of the things. He shills for all these things before. He's got the longest introduction in wrestling and all that, because it's all the things he's shilling for, his restaurant, his everything else. And Waller tried to exchange Sister Act and Sister Act 2, which are apparently big in Japan. Who knew? And tried to trade him for that. So there were all kinds of shenanigans with that. So I'm glad you enjoyed it. I really do.
I love stupid comedy. I know that that's an outlier. I don't like it all the time. I don't like it to overwhelm, but in my mind, wrestling is in a way a variety show.
Yes.
And sometimes you need these little palate cleansing moments to just kind of take you out of it. And if we had a serious hard-hitting match instead of this, I'm not sure that the impact of the later matches would have hit as hard because there was just too much to like take in.
All right. Well, that's a glass half full way to look at that one. I my notes just say not good, but not long. It said not good, but not long.
Right.
So it was
fair.
about it was fine. So Tama Tonga defeated Sonata, hell of a match there, and another big win that I wasn't sure I was expecting Tama Tonga to beat him. Obviously, Gato takes Tama Tonga pretty seriously, and we've talked before. I think they're setting him up for the big upset on Jay White later. We'll see, but he's been stepping up. He's in phenomenal shape. Tama Tonga is.
Yeah, he finally took off the shirt, and they're like, "Hey, man, why are you wearing the body protector?
You should never wear that again." Yeah, and got the win in 16:28. Real good match, and Tama Tonga is on the way up, man.
I have a question for you about your prediction, which is that Tama Tonga is slated to defeat Jay White in the final G block.
It's my upset call of the tournament.
Let me ask you this. Is it less impactful if Tama Tonga gets a draw out of him?
Well, I mean, you could do that if whatever the result has to be. If Tama Tonga is the reason that Jay doesn't quite make the win the block or something at the very end, then that would have a lot of impact. Right now, I feel like somebody's got to beat Jay in this tournament because they need some kind of challenger between now and Wrestle Kingdom. And
that's what I'm thinking. Like the draw could he's winning enough where that if he gets to a point where he actually draws with Jay White and then they do a match afterwards because like, hey, you didn't actually beat me, but I think I can beat you. And then we get that match. I was just trying to think out different scenarios, and that if they had the champion go undefeated through the bracket, but get a draw, that keeps him looking strong and keeps the contender looking strong. But I don't know if that would be a direction that they go. So I kind of wanted to bounce that off of you and see what you thought about that.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's possible they could do that. They could also do the thing where Jay goes undefeated until he faces Tama Tonga, and like the whole thing is like, I am going to go through this thing.
They are building that match to be important. Very important.
Yeah, it says I'm going to do this 6-0, and then nope, trip over the banana peel at the end, and you lose the last one, even if he still goes to the semifinals. And then he needs a challenger at some point, and a match with Tama Tonga could be a match where it would be good, and Jay could win it, and that would just be a way to keep him strong going into, not that he really needs a whole lot of help, but it could be a decent match. It would be a new type of challenger for him, one with a lot of story. The two people, the man that kicked him, the founding member, out of Bullet Club, now challenging him for the world heavyweight. Now he's being challenged for the world heavyweight title. There's a lot of layers there, and you could get a main event out of that match. But something has to happen in this tournament to give Tama Tonga a reason to challenge. That's where 100%. My brain was on it.
Yeah, no, I was trying to figure out like if the impact would be lessened if they went in that direction, because the impact of him beating Jay White would be huge. But I'm not sure if, because Jay White is the champion, how far they want to go with Tama Tonga. Can they get that same impact by going with the draw and then teasing the match afterwards? I honestly don't know. It's uncharted territory.
Yeah.
So
we'll see how it plays out. And so
I think you're probably right, but I just didn't know for sure.
I feel like a draw doesn't quite do the same job, but maybe.
Hypothetical.
Kenta and Hiroki Goto was the semifinal, and this was a hard-hitting match. And of course, you would expect that with these two. They're not shying away from the stiff stuff, and they did not. Kenta needed a win. He hadn't gotten one. Goto was on a roll early, so this is one of those where you kind of bring everybody back to the pack. And you can't complain about it. I mean, Kenta and Goto are both upper mid card, is that just below the main event top guys, and this was terrific. 18 minutes of hard hitting, solid work from two men that know how to do it. I enjoyed this one a lot. I even think it's mildly amusing that Kenta has some sort of fascination with sticks lately. He seems to be into the walking stick of Yoshihashi. He seems obsessed with the staff of Hiroki Goto and used it in this one.
I think it was good. Splinters.
I love the spot though where he turned an Ushigoroshi into a knee strike. I thought that was interesting and fit the character perfectly well. And of course, the knee thing, he ended it with the go to sleep. These were two pros that really laid down a nice match for 18 minutes.
Yeah, I agree with everything that you said. A few weeks ago, I kind of was a little critical of Kenta, just saying like he just kind of felt like he was wrestling violently and without any joy. It didn't feel like he was wrestling the same, like on the same wavelength as thing. I don't feel that way anymore, and I just kind of wanted to throw that out there that he's in lockstep in the G1, and his role in it, he's playing it well. I'm really.
The grouchy Kenta, the angry Kenta is clearly the character, especially if you watch the backstage comments, because his backstage comments are nothing but comedy. So his in-ring stuff is played up angrily and things, and then he goes back and does the backstage comments where he just does funny promotions for his book, and he's like getting Mima Shimoda, the Joshi legend who works for New Japan, to cover up some of the Yoshinoya and sponsor signs on the board with promos for his book, and he's finding goofy ways to promote that and things. So he definitely has a sense of humor. I didn't know Kenta was funny. It doesn't surprise me. I don't have any reason to think he wasn't, but his backstage comments have been really enjoyable. It's been some of my favorite parts.
I'm getting kind of Minoru Suzuki vibes out of him.
A little bit. I think Suzuki would be a more fun hang than most people think.
Yeah, too.
I'm not taking the chance though. I don't want to get choked out.
Or chopped.
Boy. Next time I'm in Japan though, seriously, I want to go to his store. He has a store in a shopping center in there that he's in when they're not on the road. He's there.
Apparently just shows days. Up and hangs out and just like whatever. Like on.
Heck yeah. David Finlay defeated Will Osprey in the main event. And we talked about how just surprise after surprise, I keep thinking, well, okay. My first note on this one, before the match started, I wrote down that Finlay is playing with house money before the match.
Yeah.
And I said that his career has already been helped by getting that main event win over Juice Robinson and getting that win in the grudge match after Juice didn't turn on him in the ring, but basically dumped him as a tag team partner and joined Bullet Club. And then it got very personal in the way that they played that up leading up to the match. Then he got the win. I thought, well, okay, that'll help David. Then he pins Shingo Takagi, who's held almost every singles title in the company, almost, and including the World Heavyweight title, the current one. And I just thought, okay, well, there it is. So we can take him more seriously now, but he doesn't have to win this. He won the damn match. But I actually wrote down that he was playing with house money going into this. There were so many fun twists, turns, and counters in this one. Os cutter on an apron. An Os cutter that Finlay turned into a stunner. Will tried the hidden blade, got the backslide, and then hit a trash panda out of nowhere to win. This shocked the crowd again. The crowd was kind of, I think, where I was mentally, which was, okay, we've seen Finlay's peak in this tournament. They've given him his big win. And now it's time for, the natural order of things. No, he beat two different people that have either competed for or held the World Heavyweight title. And
both of them have held it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's fantastic. And the matches have been good. This isn't somebody that's getting an unnecessary or an unearned push. This guy wrestled toe to toe with Shingo Takagi and Will Ospreay, and there aren't a lot of people who can do it that well.
I'm not sure if he should be the new United States champion for the company. Kind of feels like he might be too below him at this point. He's doing really, really well. I think he's made believers out of a lot of people who did not believe in his ability to get to this level. I think whatever tier that Rock Hard Juice Robinson is at, I think Finlay is the 1A, 1B to that. Okay. neither one of them have lost any ground to each other in the way that they are viewed currently at the level that they're at. If you had Juice Robinson beat Will Osprey, I think the reaction would be exactly the same right now, which says a lot about the work that David Finlay has done to gain ground and perception within this company that he is a legit contender rather than a guy that was tagging along as these other guys were getting bigger and better within the company. So fair play to David Finlay. Almost put him on the cover twice in a week in a row. Would have been the first guy. Maybe next week if he keeps it up.
Yeah.
Nothing but impressed with this guy.
Yeah, he did terrific. I'm happy for him too. So yeah, so that was the G1 matches this week. Now we also have E block standings. This matters not, but I'm still amused by it. So these are all the people that are not in the G1, and there's fewer of them this year, Jeremy. Like usually the preview tags are a G1 guy and a non-G1 guy. So like basically half the card are actually people that aren't in the G1 this year, because there are 5 matches now. We're getting into 5. That's 10. That means there are 18 guys that aren't in a singles match. So we don't have as many other people, but nevertheless, as the standings go right now, we have a tie on top.
Okay.
Bushi has 12 points, and so does Sho. So Bushi and Sho have compiled 12 points, picking up wins, and just behind them, Bad Dude Tito, because he and Jonah have gotten a lot of tag team wins. He's on 8 points. So Sho and Bushi competing for that prestigious, non-existent E-Block title.
Bad Dude Tito and Royce Isaac. I am continually impressed with how they're carrying themselves within this within the G1, and it's just been a lot of fun. Speaking of a lot of fun, I'm looking forward to what you've got with the history lesson.
All right, so we're going into more tournament history. It's the obvious choice for G1 time. So we mentioned the original World League tournaments where they were starting to get themselves established and bring in some bigger American stars as those went in, until the Madison Square Garden, the MSG League, became one of the bigger dates, set of dates, biggest tours on the calendar. So we mentioned that as the company grew, they began a big working agreement with the WWF. And I wanted to mention something very quickly on that. In 1979, of course, Antonio Inoki and Bob Backlund actually traded the WWF title. It's a phantom title change, not acknowledged in the United States. And they came up with the usual controversial type of finish to explain why he didn't take the belt back, because he didn't lose to Backlund again. It just the title just didn't stay in Japan with him. Backlund took it back, and they came up with the storyline reason. But this working agreement was a big enough deal that they were switching the title the same way that All Japan did with the NWA title a few times, and in the same era. They also revived the WWF Junior Heavyweight title. Carlos Estrada defeated Tony Gurria at a house show in New York to reestablish the title, just so they could lose it to Tatsumi Fujinami, so that belt that Tiger Mask and Dynamite Kid and Mark Rocco as the original Black Tiger were fighting over was the WWF Junior Heavyweight title. So they were married to each other, these two companies were. They were really working together a lot, and they called the tournament the Madison Square Garden League until 1983. Of course, 1983, one of the seismic years in wrestling. It's when the Supercard era began with Starrcade. It's when WWF, Vince McMahon, made his move and picked up Hulk Hogan, Mean Gene Okerlund, and Bobby Heenan, and from AWA, he got Roddy Piper brought in Roddy Piper from Crockett, and just a Junkyard Dog from Mid-South was coming. So all these dominoes begin to fall. Junkyard Dog was actually later than that. Mm-hmm. But in 1983, New Japan, in the midst of all this turmoil, created the International Wrestling Grand Prix. So they stopped doing the Madison Square Garden League, and they created the IWGP. This was the tournament that year. And it was done from May 6th to June 2nd, 1983. And the two highest scorers, it was a round-robin tournament, two highest scorers advanced to the finals. So not quite the same format. And the final standings in 1983 had Hulk Hogan at 37, Antonio Inoki at 36, and listen to these names that are in this thing. Andre the Giant at 35. And Andre played mostly a heel in New Japan, actually wrestled kind of as a bully heel there. Big John Studd, 25. Killer Khan, we talked about him as the guy that quote unquote injured Andre last week, and now he was back in Japan as a big New Japan star. Kanek from Mexico, Otto Vons from Europe, so it was an international thing. Hulk Hogan and Antonio Inoki went to the finals. They were the two highest point scorers during the tournament, and Hogan was over like crazy in Japan. They absolutely loved him. And the match, the finals between Hogan and Antonio Inoki, I believe, is on New Japan World. You would be stunned at how Hulk Hogan wrestles this match.
Right?
He worked pretty well, and he did well, and over like gangbusters. Hogan won basically by knockout. So his big move was the lariat. He had the leg drop, but it wasn't his finisher yet. And they did a thing where Inoki was on the outside. He climbs up on the apron, and Hogan comes running in. And these crowds were so enthusiastic back then. They screamed in terror as this guy came in and clobbered Antonio Inoki with a lariat on the apron, and he splattered to the floor. And Inoki, to his credit, sold him like he had been murdered in front of an entire arena full of people. And I don't know if it was officially a count out or a knockout, but Hogan won. And Hogan was the original winner of the IWGP. He won the very first one in 1983. He got a belt, but that was strictly an avatar for a trophy. It was not a defended title. This was not the first IWGP champion. We'll get to that in a bit. But it was a big prize for him. So just in case you're wondering, Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant did face each other in that tournament, and they went to a double countout. Inoki lost to Andre, but he also had a double count out with Hogan. So they would do a lot of double count out finishes back, and a lot of non-finishes. So and they used the double count out way too much in this era, to be honest with you, to protect people from doing jobs. And so Andre had a few count outs rather than jobs in the tournament that kept him from winning it. So with that in mind, they moved on to 1984, and they did it again for the same thing, but this time no finals. They just had whoever won the round robin standings was the winner. No Hulk Hogan, because, of course, by 1984, Hogan was the WWF champion and wasn't going anywhere. Certainly not going to go to Japan for a month. So with that in mind, they did use a lot of WWF talent in this one. Andre the Giant was back. Dick Murdock was back, and Adrian Adonis. They were the WWF tag team champions in this era. Mass superstar Ken Patera, Big John Studd again, and Studd was one of Hogan's early opponents for the WWF title, but Hogan couldn't get Vince McMahon was not going to let Hogan go anyplace in 1984. So Antonio Inoki won the round robin, and they didn't have any finals right there. So Inoki put himself back over in that, and he was the biggest babyface star, to be fair, by the way.
I was like, yeah, just put yourself over. You're the big star. It's your home territory.
There was
you're the big winner.
there was some of that by then.
It's called politics.
Yeah, absolutely. When you're the owner, it's fun to book yourself on top. So
not only the owner, I'm a member too.
Well, they continue to tinker with the format. You notice that we haven't quite gotten to the format that we're used to here. 1985 didn't help at all. They decided to do it as a single elimination knockout tournament.
Knockout?
Yeah, so this was just like the NCAA tournament type of thing, where it was just a regular old tournament there. And
no, I thought you meant like you had every finish was a knockout. Like,
no,
not a single elimination.
No, single elimination tournaments.
I was like, wait, what?
I used
knockout.
I used too much of a soccer term there. A knockout tournament is a single elimination.
Got it. My bad.
But this one, the finals again. Andre the Giant was a big star everywhere he went. You don't need me to tell you that. But in New Japan, he was mostly a heel, like I mentioned. He even had a heel manager, Wakamatsu, that would come around and cut his promos for him. And not that they really did promos in the same way American wrestling does, but he did have a sort of a heel manager. And he went all the way to the finals, where he defeated Tatsumi Fujinami. So now we have Hulk Hogan, Antonio Inoki, and Andre the Giant as men who have won IWGP tournaments, just to give you an idea that basically only the biggest stars in wrestling won this thing. So we are at the point now where this is a major deal. Some other interesting names in that 1985 tournament again, by the way. I mentioned Andre. El Canek was in there. Iron Mike Sharp.
Oh,
if you remember Iron Mike. Now, of course, his father and uncle were the Sharp brothers, and one of the original foreign heels against Ricky Dozon and some of those matches that were aired on primetime TV in Japan and watched by the entire country back in the 50s. It really got Japanese pro wrestling started right there. So even though Iron Mike Sharp was not the biggest star in American wrestling, he could still, because he was the son of these guys that were in some of these legendary all-time matches, that he could get a job there. King Kong Bundy was in the tournament. So was Adrian Adonis, Bill Eadie, the masked superstar I mentioned right there. So Dick Murdoch went to the semifinals, as did Seiji Sakaguchi, but Andre the Giant and Fujinami faced each other off.
Bill Eadie as in future Demolition Bill Eadie.
Yeah, as an X. Yeah. So he had a lot of names over there, but you're absolutely right. Yeah. I was thinking a lot of people would know him better as he was Axe in Demolition.
Yeah. Cool.
1986, we're getting closer to the format. Now this one was, we had two blocks. We got two blocks, Block A and Block B. Now we're on the roll, but they had semifinals. So the top two finishers in A and faced off in the semifinals. Top two finishers in B faced off in the semifinals, and then the finals. And that one came down to Antonio Inoki and Andre the Giant. If you're seeing a pattern here, you're right. Akira Maeda and Dick Murdoch. You see that Dick Murdoch was really well thought of by New Japan at this point. He's advanced twice in the tournament, pretty far. Some interesting people in this one included, again, the masked superstar. I mentioned him before. Jimmy Snuka was in the 1986 tournament. Snuka had gone back and forth between New Japan and All Japan a couple of times. And the Wild Samoan, who was Samu in the Head Shrinkers. Remember him?
A question for you. Right before I almost knocked over my mic, was this the finish? Was this the year that Inoki and Andre the Giant had like a weird finish for the championship? I remember there was like there was a story to it.
Yeah. Inoki won the semifinals by submission over Andre, which was a very weird finish. Now I've only seen like little tiny clips of this one, so I don't know the entire story of how that one went down, but it was a very odd type of finish. But Inoki was still doing his kind of martial arts champion gimmick during this time, so there were some strange things going on with that. He would just do some weird finishes sometimes, where it was a knockout, a flash knockout, or a submission type of thing. He thought that was fun.
It would work back then, maybe not so much now.
Yeah. I think a lot of people were just like, well, that was a botch. But 1987, we got it, Jeremy. Block A, Block B, the winner of the blocks met in the finals. We got the format. So 1987 was the first time we saw the format that we've come to know and love, even though this year we've departed from it a little bit. But we had the finals, and with Block A versus Block B. Also, the winner of this tournament became the first IWGP champion as a defended title, instead of just a trophy or a belt that was emblematic of winning a tournament. Now you are the champion and you're defending it like a belt. A lot of people don't realize there was no New Japan heavyweight champion before this. Like Inoki had his World Martial Arts title that he defended every once in a while. There was the junior heavyweight title that Fujinami had, but there wasn't like a world heavyweight title in New Japan back then. This created it. This created the IWGP champion. That's the belt that had the lineage all the way up until they merged it with the Intercontinental title just a couple of years ago. And this one came down to Antonio Inoki again. And again, when you own the company, you tend to make a lot of finals. And he wrestled Masa Saito, who was a WWF tag team champion with Mr. Fuji back in the day. So Inoki won the A block. Saito won the B block. And in that one, a name that's interesting in this one is Scott Hall was in the tournament. 1987. This was very early in Scott's career. He was still looking a little bit more like Magnum PI days with the porn mustache and from his AWA days, basically.
And that was one of he did a couple of tours in New Japan, didn't he?
Yep. Yeah, he did. Yeah, his son was in the dojo for a while. Scott's son was in the dojo for a little while. Didn't end up in the Young Lions system are on the cards and things, but he did train in the dojo. So actually a fairly long history with Scott Hall in New Japan right there. But this was his IWGP tournament, and Inoki pinned Saito to become the first ever IWGP champion in 1987. So
I never thought he could pull it off, but congratulations to Antonio Inoki.
Imagine that.
The struggles he must have overcome in order to achieve his goal.
Well,
I'm really proud of him. Really proud.
Not just anybody lays down for. Oh well, yeah. Actually,
what a baby face obstacle to overcome.
Also, Congo the Barbarian was in this tournament. If you watch Crockett back in the day, the Barbarian was, and he became. We mentioned Samu was in the tournament in 1986. Well, this was Sione from the Head Shrinker. So you had both Head Shrinkers in the tournament years later, and the Barbarian, of course, is the guy that had the Road Warrior-esque paint. Face paint in 1986 Crockett, part of
Often
Paul Jones.
Imitated, never duplicated.
Right. But also, by the way, a sweet guy. I've met the Barbarian there, and he's a really nice man. And the next year, though, I'm going to mention this real quick because we're coming down to it. In 1988, they simply did a round robin tournament, and that Inoki won again. But they were kind of winding down the IWGP at this point. They didn't have it in 1989. They had a World Cup tournament that did not work. They had 4 different blocks, and they had Soviet martial artists. Well, 89. Yeah, 89 was still a Soviet Union one. But for a lot of that from the Eastern Bloc countries doing martial arts, and it was kind of the beginning of the mixed martial arts, but they were doing work shoots. How about that? It was
a different era that we
very different era. Yeah. It didn't work. Nobody really liked it. They only did it the one time. And then they didn't do anything in 1990. And it was 1991. They brought the tournament back and named it the G1 CLIMAX. So we now have the name of the IWGP. So the tournament gave birth to the title that we now know and love and have been keeping track of ever since. The IWGP name has now been established. And instead of a tournament, it's now a championship. And from here, we're going to go on to the beginnings of the tournament that we now know as the G1 CLIMAX. And it still took them a few years to dial in the full format. We'll get into that. But you'll see the seeds beginning to grow into what we have now, where it's very quickly, Jeremy became the highlight of the year and the biggest tour. The MSG League kind of established it. The IWGP created a championship for these guys to chase. And then the G1 CLIMAX brought it all together to what we see today. And we'll get more into that next week.
So that is the International Wrestling Grand Prix.
Correct.
Grade 1 Climax is the official full term of the G1.
That's right. That's when it's in trouble. That's the full name its mother calls out.
Little known fact. The original concept for the show I wanted to call the New Japan Grand Prix Cap.
It was very close.
Oh, so close. Almost got it. But back pocket. Now that it's on the air, I stake all claims to it.
So there you have it. So we've got, like I said, we've got a tournament, we got a championship, and then we'll get into how the G1 developed next week. And Jeremy, anything else that we should cover before we go? What's coming up this week? What are we looking forward to?
We have 5 nights of matchups over the next week.
Gonna be busy.
5 nights. August 5th, we got Jonah versus Jeff Cobb. Naito versus Hinare. Taichi versus Chase Owens. Hiroshi Tanahashi versus Evil, which I predict will be the main event. And Juice Robinson versus Yujiro Takahashi.
Yeah, that's
the
not
following night. No, these are all not listed in order. I noticed that for the second, David Finlay and Will Osprey was listed as number 2 on the card, according to the original published tournament. So they've been shifting these around.
Okay.
And not necessarily this is the match order, which I think works a lot better.
I'll be shocked if Yujiro doesn't go last, I tell you.
Shocked. I mean, he's main event Yujiro. Tokyo Pimp till you die.
What else?
August 6th, we got Yoshihashi versus the ELP. We got Shingo Takagi versus Will Osprey, which could be a match contender of the entire tournament. Another contender for match of the tournament, Toru Yano versus Lance Archer. We have Great-O-Khan versus Jay White and Hiroki Goto versus Zack Saber Jr. So there are two matches on there to circle as automatic winners, and then one more arguably that you should make time to watch, and then the others, we're going to be polite, but we do not have high expectations. The following night, so we have 3 nights of action in a row. We have Tom Waller versus Bad Luck Folly. Bad luck for Tom Waller in that match. We got Juice Robinson versus ELP in another Bullet Club shenanigans match.
Yeah.
We have the match I was saying that Jonah circled on his calendar. Kazuchika Okada versus
I'm really looking forward to this one. Yeah.
That's the match I'm really hoping Jonah shows everyone what he can do. We have Tomohiro Ishii versus Chase Owens that night, and then Aaron Henare versus Evil. We take a break. We come back a night later on August 9th, and we have Jonah versus Lance Archer. So Jonah has a couple of big matches back-to-back. We have Naito versus Kenta. Tama Tonga versus Taichi, also a pick'em. Sonata versus Chase Owens, and then Yoshihashi versus Yujiro Takahashi, which, even though it's last on the card, I don't think that's moving. I think that's main eventing. Pretty. I think it's going to beat Naito versus Kenta. I'm not going to put money on it, but when I get to take a victory lap later, this is why. This is going to be why.
Well, especially if they continue the narrative of Naito rallying to get to the semifinals. I mean, this is going to be a big step in that direction for him.
Yes. And then we have one more. This is going to be the biggest test for us, producing results for you guys. But August 10th in Hiroshima, Okada versus Waller, which I am exceptionally looking forward to.
Absolutely.
Zack Saber Jr. versus Evil. Tama Tonga versus Great-O-Khan. Hiroshi Tanahashi versus Hiroki Goto. And David Finlay versus El Phantasmo.
That's going to be a good one.
This has potential to be a show-stealing card. If I'm just looking at this card myself.
Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff on that one. That one's at the Sun Plaza. Yeah, there's I mean, Zack Saber and Evil will be what it is. We'll see what Zack can do with that. Again, it's Watanabe himself is a fine performer right there, but the Evil character and the way they're portraying it right now makes it a challenge to have great matches. But biggest match of Tom Lawler's life by a mile and a half. And I figure that he's going to really step up, because I see what he can do in those preview tags when he's in with one of the best in the world. I think we're going to see something special. Tanahashi and Goto, I mean, those are two pretty smart guys who know how to work a match. Finlay and Phantasmo is probably going to be great. That could be, until you get to those very end ones, Jeremy. Of course, like the last night of block action, they always like matchups and people. That one's going to be a great night. Also, just with the standings and the way things are looking, that Shingo Takagi Will Osprey match could be consequential.
Yes, I think we're gonna be seeing clear, defined pace leaders after a couple of those matches. There's going to be 3 more shows after that, including one super show with a number of blocks. I think 10 block matches on the final night. So we'll come back for that week. This next week, we'll cover those 5 nights. We are going to potentially have our first special guest. You'll find out when we go do that next week. But that's all I got for you, Steven. What do you got for us?
The only thing I'm going to mention here is that we'll just go over very briefly the current standings as it goes today here on August 4th. In Block A, Kazuchika Okada is leading the pack with 6 points. Jeff Cobb and Bad Luck Fale with 4. And in B block, Jay White is the leader in the clubhouse with 6. Well, he's not in the clubhouse yet, is he? They still have matches to go. But Jay White has 6. He has not lost, and neither has Okada. Tama Tonga and Sonata follow up with 4. Everybody else has 2. Nobody has 0. Everybody has a win. Everybody has a win. Not everybody has a loss, though. Hiroshi Tanahashi, Zack Saber Jr., and Hiroki Goto in Block C have 4 points. Henare, Naito, Evil, and Kenta all on 2, and anyone could win it. The D block, David Finlay, the upset surprise leader with Will Ospreay, 4 points. The rest of that block with just the 2. They've been sort of trading wins with one another. But we expect somebody to come out of that pack, and I think that again, Takagi versus Osprey is going to go a long way to telling us who. So
Tiebreaker time, buddy.
Could very well be. So with that in mind, Jeremy, you want to go over your socials?
You can find me at Jer Firestone, talking on Twitter. You can find me at the Fight Game Media Group on Facebook, chatting about G1 with whoever wants to talk about it. And Steven, what about you?
I am at Stephen Conway 88 on the Twitters, and I also am a contributor for Fight Game Media's website there, so make sure to check that out. Check out all the feed of Fight Game Media, the podcast. Check out the articles on the website. Check out this YouTube feed for a lot of good shows and clips of other things that you can find. Some of those clips will tease you to the Patreon for Fight Game Media, where you can find even more content. And we mentioned it before, Jeremy, it's literally impossible. You don't have enough hours in the day to cover everything that goes on in combat sports, wrestling, MMA, and boxing. But if you subscribe to Fight Game Media Patreon, you'll have shows that will give you expert analysis and recaps of all of it. You can keep track of everything while you're driving, while you're walking your dog, whatever you need. We've got it for you right there. $5 a month. You should check.
We'll help you. We'll help you with all of it.
Help you. Exactly.
And we'll try and make you laugh. Maybe not all the time, but we'll try.
We'll give it a shot. It won't be for lack of effort, but it could be
Not
for
at
lack
all.
of what might be a lack of ability in comedy wise. But so
Tough crowd.
for Jeremy Feinstone, I am Stephen Conway. Thank you again for watching us here on Speaking of Strong Style. We're happy you joined us. We'll be back next week to talk more of this wonderful G1 tournament, and we will see you then.
We'll see you when we see you.